Hi, everyone. Most of you know me if you're watching this, but just in case you don't, my name's Don Dormer. And for the last 20 years, I've been in the Army. And last Friday, I had my final award ceremony and retirement farewell. I wasn't sure I could get any words out. I wanted to write something. I knew last couple of weeks I wanted to prepare a statement, but I've been pretty emotional about it. Up until Friday, I kind of thought maybe I wasn't going to say anything, but as I was driving to the award ceremony, I realized my guys deserve something. My soldiers deserve something. The people that I've served with deserve something. The people that helped me get to where I am deserve something. So I tried to come up with something on the spot. I don't think I did that well. I totally left people out. So I sat home. I spent 2 days trying to write what I'm about to read to you. It's taken me 2 days because I can't get through it. I haven't gotten through it once without getting emotional. I read it, it feels like 100 times. So please bear with me. And there's 1,000 other people that don't get mentioned. That wasn't intentional. Everyone, if you know me and you're watching this, you're important to me. I want you to know that. But there were some pivotal points in my life and basically through my Army career that I think got me to where I am today. And I love my life. I love my wife. I love my children. I've had an opportunity to go to college, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds for me. And I think I'm going to be a teacher. And I couldn't be more excited. At the same time, I'm losing a big part of myself. But it was really the people that I'm going to miss. This is for you. Friday, I said goodbye. I said goodbye to my Army family. For the last 20 years, the majority of my life, I've spent in the Army. While the Army is not the complete definition of who I am, it is undoubtedly shaped who I've become. I've been replaying my life over and over, wondering how I've gotten to where I am today. Like many, I've known a lot of doubt, fear, turmoil, and lack of belief in self. And over the years, I've come to appreciate more and more my upbringing and the turmoil I faced throughout my life so far. Some of the best lessons I've learned, the most life-changing, have been about belief in self, overcoming what seemed impossible at the time. Before I talk about my Army life, I want to remember and thank those responsible for getting me to a point where I dreamed of more. Thank those that gave me the fundamentals I need to be successful, to be a better man. A few days ago, I messaged both my father and my mother, and I tried to express how grateful I am that they were always there when I needed them most. That my accomplishments were also theirs. That I tried very hard to make them proud and exceed all expectations. Not just because I wanted them to be proud, but I wanted them to believe that anything was possible. Growing up, we didn't have much, but we always had enough. To this day, I never lived in any one address for more than 5 years. My parents, raising 4 children, trying to pay the bills, changing jobs and losing income unexpectedly made things difficult at best growing up. But not once did I ever sleep outside. Not once did I ever feel not loved. My parents' greatest gift to me beyond my life was instilling my inherent compassion and love for others. They introduced me to God and gave me a chance to find my own salvation. As a boy, I thought I might want to be a priest, but my calling to have a family outweighed my calling to be on the altar. I dreamed of a future when I slept. I would have someone to snuggle up close to and hold me as I fell asleep, much like my mother did for me when I was very young. My mom would gently caress my face with her finger as I fell asleep. I fell asleep, dreaming of how much I was loved. Later in life, I found my wife Paula, with a familiar foundation of love, like my mother's, and each night when she holds me, it's a dream come true. But Paula wasn't the first to love me like that. My mother's love has always been there. When I fell down, when I was hurt, she was there. When I was scared, when I was lonely, she was there. Unknowingly, she gave me the greatest inspiration to become more. When I was about 15, she and I were riding in a car. She was talking to me, but looking back, I think she might have been talking to herself. She was upset and venting, and at the time, and even now, not really sure what was wrong. But I remember wanting to make her feel better. I didn't know what to say. She was explaining how hard life is sometimes, that sometimes no matter what you do, things may not work out. She started to apologize for not having enough money to send me to college. Then she said my grades probably weren't good enough to go anyway. She certainly wasn't wrong. I was a terrible student and lacked the motivation to be better. She said if you want to go to college, you'll have to try harder in school and figure out how to do it financially on your own. She then asked me what I might think I would like to do once I got out of school. I remember mentioning the Marines like my brother, and her take on that was I was too sweet of a kid and a little too scrawny for the military. I remember being quiet, listening to her, feeling like she'd failed me somehow, or maybe I had failed her. I was thinking she was looking for something inspirational, something she could be proud of. I remember thinking to myself, I may not have the answer, but I could do better at school. I'll show her that things can and do work out when you give your all and when you work hard. That day I decided I would show my mom I wasn't too dumb and too poor for college, because when you're 15, that's what you hear. I was headed into my junior year of high school, and I finished that year with a GPA 3.4. If you'd added my 2 previous school years' GPAs together, they wouldn't equal that. I had a teacher, her name was Mrs. Herr, who came up to me at the end of that year, or somewhere during the school year, and said to me she was impressed with how well I was doing in her class compared to the previous 2 years. She asked me what changed, and I responded with, I decided I wanted to go to college. Despite my mother's intuition, I didn't know it then, but my grades were so poor the first 2 years of high school that college was a stretch, but it wasn't impossible. Mrs. Herr knew that, and her initial facial expression gave me a bit of pause. But before she spoke, her words of encouragement and explaining that I would have to continue to work hard and keep doing that, and if I did, my goal of achieving college would be achieved. She breathed new life into me. She was the first person who wasn't in my inner circle to show me that caring for others and inspiring them was important. My senior year, I went to Votech for law enforcement, corrections, and security. At the time, I had hoped to be a state trooper, and my interest in the military had faded as I got older. I had the second highest grade in my class and received a very small scholarship for it. I remember begging my parents to come to the awards night for seniors. They kept asking if I was getting anything, and I played stupid and said I wasn't sure. Maybe. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to show them how hard I had been trying. Like always, they'd been working very hard, and the last thing that they wanted to do was go to the school, waste time at an awards thing, and then see my disappointment at the end of the night when I wasn't recognized for anything. But I got them to go. When it was all said and done, I met my mom and dad at the back of the auditorium and showed them the 2 awards and scholarships that I received. I saw them both beam with pride, and I knew in that moment I needed to continue to do things like that and show them that I and we could do anything. While neither scholarship was enough to even attempt to start college, I had hoped I was showing them, her, that I was finding a way. She always stood by me, even when she disagreed with my decision to join the Army. Her silence in the days before I left later reminded me of how much a mother loves her son. Being in the service can be hard. The only thing harder is being the mother of a service member. We choose to serve without fully understanding the sacrifice, but mothers know all too well the sacrifice. They get no choice. just handed their service and sacrifice in support of their child. My father always told me that if someone's willing to train you and pay you while doing it, take advantage of that. You never know when you're going to need that training. Probably the second best lesson he ever gave me, the first being the price of $1. But his words about developing skills and having them the rest of your life to utilize always stayed with me. I started to work at a retirement home called Willow Valley Manor North when I was 16 years old as a waiter. By the time I graduated high school and started working full-time, I'd been promoted a few times and changed to different positions. My last position was a maintenance man. I was an 18-year-old that changed out air filters and light bulbs and was singing musicals to patients in the dementia ward just to give them a smile because I liked helping people. My boss, Kurt, was a younger guy, and he was in charge of our whole department. He was someone I admired and looked up to, and he was a hockey guy too. There was about 6 of us all together. I remember when I went in for the interview for the position, he mentioned that he normally wouldn't consider someone as young as me because we typically lacked the experience. I was quick to mention that all the times that my father taught me how to fix stuff around the house, the washer, the dryer, the cars, the drywall, painting, things like that. I told him how he used to take me to work and take me to job sites and show me how to use a multitude of tools. He seemed impressed, but said he had a few other older applicants he needed to talk to, but it was my reputation at Willow Valley that got me the interview, and I should be proud of that. That was the first time I really appreciated all the times my father had me helping him fix things around the house. Because he'd always say, so for next time. As a teenager, you always think, Dad, I'll make enough money to have someone else fix this for me so I won't have to. But that day I felt like I had a chance, a slim chance, because thanks to my dad, I knew how to fix stuff. It was a few days later, Kurt came to me and said he chose me because I seemed so excited about the opportunity. And I genuinely was. He took a chance on me, and I tried very hard to make him proud and not regret that decision. I was surprised, though, how proud my dad was of my job. At 18, I didn't think much of myself or my job. But I made good money, and I felt like I was still excelling. But my father kept telling me what a great job and opportunity I had working there. He saw the potential. So did Kurt. My father's rough communication skills weren't the easiest to understand all the time, but I was starting to value the lessons and learn to listen more. Aside from my parents, several people helped me along the way. When I was 9, I started in martial arts. Mr. Larry Weaver was the owner of the school. He taught because he loved to teach and mentor. He didn't make money. He just made enough to pay the rent and for some of the equipment. I'm pretty sure there were several months where students showed up without paying their dues, but he never turned anybody away for money. But what made him so special was his love for people and helping them overcome whatever obstacles they faced, whether physical or mental. He instilled a can-do attitude. Can't was a bad 4-letter word. He taught us that pain is a state of mind. He was the first to show me that I could be more than what I thought possible. He showed me that my inner strength, my heart, could be stronger than my muscles. That my inner strength could help me do things that would seem to defy logic. As a boy, he was larger than life. As I grew and realized how and why he was the way he was, he became a legend. Before he was my Sabam Nim, he was a Navy veteran. He was stationed aboard the USS Liberty, which happens to be one of the most decorated Navy ships in American history. Today, on June 8th, 1967, along with 204 sailors, they were deliberately and viciously attacked by the Israeli military. He was severely wounded with over 170 of his shipmates. 34 of his shipmates died that day, defending the Liberty and our liberty. He was awarded the Purple Heart and left maimed for his service and for the rest of his life. Despite politics, despite his injuries, despite his pain, despite the risk of more internal injury, he prevailed on. His love for his country, his shipmates, and his family fueled his passion. Every year on or about the anniversary of the attack, we would stand in silence in the karate school for the men that were lost and the men who were never the same. It left a profound impact on me, and later in my service when I suffered a career-ending injury, it was his inspirational story that helped me believe that I too could overcome. For that alone would be enough to be cherished by a former student, but his ability to teach me how to effectively use my inner spirit to be stronger than I really was cemented my love for him. My brother Joe. He joined the Marines when I was about 8 or 9. 10 years my senior. He is always my idol, still is. A karate student too, he was a big influence on me. And not only taught me how to fight and how to take a hit, but more importantly, how to stand back up when you get knocked down. Not just in karate, but in life. He introduced me to music, girls, and style. But most of all, he taught me how to dream. He always had time for me when he was around. He let his younger brother tag along with him and his friends all the time. We often found ourselves narrowly escaping trouble, but he always looked out for me and made sure I was okay. He's never let the world or anyone tell him he can't do anything. He chases his dreams with a passion that is only second to the love and passion he has for his wife, Christine, and their children. He showed me that as you grow, your dreams and aspirations can change. And that's not only okay, but the precursor to bigger and more fantastic dreams. As my dreams have changed with time, I've always tried to keep moving forward while keeping my head down. Sometimes that's a low crawl. Other times it's a sprint with my weapon at the ready. Something that he taught me. Head down, but always at the ready. Ryan Spangler is a buddy from school. Hockey's our thing. In the summer between 7th and 8th grade, my family moved to his neighborhood. Shortly after, he got sick. Our class made some get well cards for him, and our teacher, Mrs. Vasco, asked if anyone knew where he lived to deliver the cards. Then I was still very shy, but felt obligated to raise my hand because, well, we rode the bus together and he was always super nice to me. So that day after school, I took him his cards. From that day forth, we were the best of friends. Playing hockey in the driveway, starting our hockey team in the adult league in town, learning to drive together, looking for girls, listening to music, a modern day Laurel and Hardy. But it was early on when I realized he was just much more than a buddy. One day out in the driveway, we were playing hockey. My Kmart shoes were not made for the beating I was giving them, and they were falling apart and held together only by duct tape. While running, I ran out of my shoes and the duct tape failed again. Ryan tells me, "Hold on. I got an extra pair of shoes in the house you can have." They're quite a bit bigger than what I needed, but a couple of extra pairs of socks helped with that, and the shoes didn't have holes, so I was a happy camper. They looked new. He said he never really wore them, and he liked his dilapidated Vans anyway, so I can have them. See, he knew that I didn't want to ask my mom for new shoes because we only got new shoes at the beginning of the school year, and we didn't have extra money for that kind of stuff. And I was also afraid she wouldn't let me play hockey anymore because of it. So, a few weeks later, we're sitting in the living room, in his living room, and we're talking to his parents. He was kicked back in a recliner, and we were talking, and his mom noticed that he was wearing his Vans, and she asked him where his new shoes were. He glanced at me, then glanced back at his mom, and he said, "Well, they hurt my feet, so I can't wear them. I like my Vans anyway, they're more comfortable." His mom shrugged and walked away. We never really spoke about it until years later. But that was the moment I realized Ryan was a giver. His belief in God and willingness and want to help others was inspirational. I wanted to be more like him, in a position to help those that may not even know they need help. He earned my loyalty and gained my love as a brother. The extended Spangler family. From Ryan's parents, Dale and Sherry, to his aunt and uncle, Troy and Robin, to his grandparents, my mom and Pop-Up Jones. When things in my home were too much to bear as a teenager, I found refuge in your homes. You opened your houses and your hearts to a kid that didn't realize how important you were to him until he decided to leave for the Army. It would take a lifetime to express my gratitude. When my childhood home no longer exists, coming and staying with you when I visit gives me a feeling of home. You give me a place to come home to. While I've had a rather nomadic life, your home is where I tell my children I grew up, where I feel the most nostalgic. I love you guys. Dan Korshkin is another buddy from school. Dan's ability to be brutally honest about things always kind of scared people away. He never tried to be something he wasn't. He never complained about the cards life dealt him. Stricken with a rare form of cancer that leaves him scarred and maimed, he always finds some humor to get through the day. Sometimes dark, but it's always funny. He's the constant reminder of reality and the less fortunate. The constant reminder of his reality and the less fortunate helped me stay humble. He often reminded me of what I had when I was too selfish to see past what I didn't have. He never judged me. He never lost faith in me. He always stood by me. He too became a brother brought together by happenstance, but bonded by love, by loyalty, honesty, and the ability to be ourselves free of judgment. In the weeks leading up to my enlistment, my family was preparing for the loss of my grandfather, the one for whom I was named. I and my father share the same name. Him Jr., my father the third, and I the fourth. I had not so recently had my heart broken and found solace with another girl who had moved to Hawaii. The feeling of being a maintenance man wasn't what I was destined to be. The feeling like the whole world around me was moving on without me. My buddy Ryan had a great career in a factory. My buddy Dan was headed off to college. I felt lost. I felt left behind. At some point, I stopped believing in myself and my ability to be more. 2 days after my 19th birthday, who very few remembered because, well, life happens, I walked into the Army office looking to get as far away as possible. Hawaii seemed like a good place considering I knew someone special there. My recruiter, Staff Sergeant Jackson, was more than happy to get my information and give me the pre-qualifying test. I passed and he said, "When do you want to leave?" And I said, "Yesterday." 9 days later, I was at Fort Benning, Georgia, prepared to be an infantryman. I was leaving, telling everyone I was moving on, but looking back, I was running away. I joined for all the wrong reasons, even though they may be valid. College money, adventure, following a girl, avoiding the uncomfortable silence and discord at home. I hoped I was going to find something, but what I didn't expect to find was myself. On the Sunday before I left, I went to see my grandfather in the hospital, August 27th in 2000. I went to say goodbye. He was a World War II veteran, went to Europe after most of the fighting was over, but still part of the greatest generation of soldiers to have ever fought for liberty. My father, a Navy veteran, my brother, a Marine. Suddenly it seemed important to continue a tradition I didn't realize we had, military service. I walked into the room of a giant who had succumbed to the relentless persistence of emphysema. Eyes closed, oxygen mask on, flat on his back, perfect hair out of place, needing a shave. Grandpop laid there unaware of my presence until I grabbed his hand. He was the first I made a promise to. I promised to visit when I completed training. I promised to make him proud. I told him I loved him very much and that the last thing I ever said to him was this: I want you to know I intend to name my firstborn son Donald Vincent Dormer V. I don't feel pressured to name him that. I want to do it because I'm proud of the men that share the name and who they are, and I hope to make them just as proud. He squeezed my hand so tight, I almost hit the floor. He crushed my fingers. He couldn't talk, but he said so much. He died the day I left, August 29th, 2000. On January 23rd, 2004, in a hospital in Newport News, Virginia, my wife Paula squeezed my hand so hard it put me on the floor. She gave birth to our son, Donald Vincent Dormer V. Writing this, I had realized that she got the strength to squeeze my hand so hard that day from a man up above. Basic training was a whirlwind of emotion. I had lost my grandfather, and the uncertainty of my decision to enlist at home and in my head had me lost in searching for answers. I quickly discovered that most people in basic training have very similar feelings. While each of us had our own personal issues, we were mostly all looking for the same thing: purpose. Despite joining for the wrong reasons, I quickly learned that being a soldier was what being a soldier was all about. They drill the Army values into your head, making sure that you have the personal courage needed to fight alongside your brothers to your left and to your right. They put you in front of your biggest fears. For me, it was heights. They make you conquer them. If you're ever interested, ask me one day about Drill Sergeant Turner and the rappel tower. I will tell you the story of how I learned to function with fear. I had two drill sergeants, Drill Sergeant Zamora and Drill Sergeant Begley. They were two of the baddest mofrackies in the infantry. I'm confident in that statement, knowing that one of them went on to be a command sergeant major in special operations, and the other, well, he was just mean as hell. And when we got to the finish line, he said he was proud of us, and he looked us in the eyes. And when he did that, you knew he was the real deal. It would be unfair to expect them to remember me or any of their trainees, but they both had a great impact on my life, and I firmly believe I wouldn't have made it as far as I did if I hadn't had them as leaders early on. I'm grateful to them and to their families because I now know the sacrifice their families and they made for me and my fellow soldiers. My first unit was Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division in Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. I went there with a few new brothers from basic training: Fifield, Garcia, Nosey, and Rivera. All of us were very different, but all the same. They made the transition easier. We all ended up in different units, but remained close for a few years until we PCS'd and lost contact. Later, after the war, when social media became a thing, some of us reconnected. But the weight of life and the aftermath of deployment left us a little distant and out of focus. I've never forgotten you or your loyalty and our brotherhood. I still think about you all the time and hope peace has found you. You're always welcome in my home. After all, we always said home was for us was just wherever we laid our heads. Specialist Jose Enrique Lopez, my first buddy and mentor. Dude, I wish you could see me now. I was telling my boy the other day all about you and how we used to ride around in your Civic, not doing much, just hanging out. How you always had me under your wing. I would have followed you anywhere, and you knew it. And you knew better, and you had made me stay home. And I'm still here. I think about you all the time, your family. Every few years I look on the Facebook to see if I can find your mama, so I can tell her how great you were to me, and that I still remember, and still feel your loss. And I miss you. Specialist Hales, Specialist Smart, and Specialist Henderson. You guys were the best, and each of you had a unique impact on me. More than any other team I was in after that. I enjoy seeing you on Facebook with your families and enjoying life. Again, you're always welcome in my home. I would love to tell your kids some days how you were my first heroes. I hope you all are well. Dave and Keith, the first soldiers I referred to by their first names. Dave, you know you're one of my closest and dearest friends. Our dynamic relationship has been lost more than once in laughter, tears, and on a map. You've always made me feel like I could be me, and I never had to be something I wasn't. You know I love you, and I miss you, and I hope you're well. Keith, you saved me from the loss of Lopez. I tried to cover down on you as he did for me. You were always up for an adventure and ready to be rowdy. You both always had my back, and I hope you know I'll always have yours. The Hawaii Ohana. Dad, Mom Robertson, Bernice, Dee, Heather, Tom, Dave, and Keith again. The family we created to mitigate the loneliness together was special beyond words. You unknowingly kept me together at some of the lowest points in my life. I can't express how I feel, only simply say that I love you. Mahalo, Ohana. Sergeant Montesinos, our supply NCO. He was the first non-infantry NCO to have a profound impact on me. When we were in the field, he was the one that brought us our chow. When he and Specialist Olson arrived, they always asked for volunteers. Specialist Hales always made it very clear that my new name was volunteer, especially in the field. So after 1 or 2 chow runs, I decided I wouldn't wait for Sergeant Montesinos to call for volunteers. I would just get up and help serve chow. After about 4 or 5 field exercises, one particular day I went over like normal to help. But Sergeant Montesinos flipped out. At first, I thought I screwed something up and did something wrong, but he went right over to the first sergeant and complained that I was the only one that ever took initiative to help. He then asked for permission to feed me first before anyone else ate. I ate, and then the company watched. And then he had some grumpy specialists serving chow. I remember getting qualified later that day by those same grumpy specialists. But I always remembered how Sergeant Monty recognized my efforts. I always tried to remember not to forget anyone, especially the wallflowers, who showed up, did their part, and went home without trying to make it about them. He was a good leader, and he cared about his soldiers. I saw what I needed to become. At some point, I had decided to get married and secretly kept it to myself. I needed some advice, so I'd asked 2 people who were senior squad leaders, 2 guys who I admired from afar, and they had families. Staff Sergeant Nybert and Staff Sergeant Hobbs. They both gave me the same basic advice. Don't force it. You'll know when you know. There was no outward judgment, but I'm sure they were wondering what I was up to. Neither one of them ever treated me like a private, meaning they never talked down to me. They were always very kind and encouraging and supportive. Staff Sergeant Nybert went on to be an officer. Staff Sergeant Hobbs, well, one day in Afghanistan, shortly after I had arrived, I was walking back to my rack and I saw a picture and his name on a memorial wall. He had died in action just a few months before I had arrived. I still don't understand, and I pray for his family. Why better men died is something I'll struggle with to this day. Sergeant Magyar was my first real platoon sergeant. The man carried a machete and was like 6'2", 180 pounds, but he was a real deal. Think of Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge. He was smart, articulate, and taught me all sorts of things. He had 30 young men that he was responsible for, but he spent a lot of time with me. I was the first new guy they had had for a while, so I was the weakest link. It was him who I strived to be like if I had ever become Sergeant First Class. The biggest impact you made on me, though, was when you saw me hurt. You took me to sick call, and you adamantly described the difference between being hurt and being injured to the PA, and demanded more than just water and 800 milligram ibuprofen. A lesson I would need to relearn later on, but for sure you probably saved my knee. I had surgery on it this past year. Likely would have happened a lot sooner if you had not been the leader you were. Since, I've tried to ensure my soldiers know the difference between being hurt and being injured. Thanks for all you did for me. I hope you are well. First Sergeant Miller. To be honest, at the time I didn't think you liked me much. But I realized later on I was a private and you were a first sergeant, and that's just how it goes. But you two spent a lot of extra time with me. I watched and I learned, and I did my best to make you proud. On September 11th, when the world stopped turning, it was you who took me aside and asked me if I was okay. The first sergeant is the mother of the company. You set the bar high, and you took real good care of us. Days kind of run together. I was technically in 3 units, the 221st, the 202nd, and the 217th. The 221st and the 202nd were essentially the same unit. We stood up the 202nd to deploy. There are many amazing people I've met on my journey over the last 20 years, and it would take a lifetime to remember everyone here. But there were a select few who stood out and helped me become better. Sergeant First Class Long, who retired Command Sergeant Major Long, was another gunny highway type character. I was an outsider. I was an infantryman who converted to their MOS. I felt like I struggled to assimilate into a new culture. But he was what right looked like. He led the way and put me in positions to where I could excel. He quickly found my strengths and he utilized them, and he recognized my weaknesses and he strengthened them. He was also a good family man and shared those lessons too, indirectly and from afar. I always looked up to him and how he not just carried himself, but his family and our whole unit. Staff Sergeant and Sergeant McCartney. Staff Sergeant McCartney was the biggest, baddest female soldier I ever met. She was a leader through and through. Coming from the infantry, working with females was awkward at first. It's the best way I can describe it. But with her, I quickly realized she could have been in the infantry in a former life. She was hard, smart, and a stud at PT. If that's all she was, she still could have made Sergeant Major. But she was so much more. She was kind and a mentor. She was quick to correct, but never discouraging. Sergeant McCartney, her other half, was just as hard, smart, and studly too. Except he was always well reserved, unlike Staff Sergeant McCartney. You never really heard him yell, but when he was upset with you, you knew it, and you knew why. He made you feel like you could have always done better, but never in a bad way. I admired how professional they always were together, especially at work. They loved each other all the same. It must have been hard, but they were always professional. They still are, and I admire them from afar. Sergeant First Class Ogle. Sergeant Ogle held a lot of positions in the unit, but his last with me was as my platoon sergeant. He was quiet, reserved, and very intelligent. He cared about us more than he cared about himself. It was hard to see him stress and see the stress on his face, taking care of all of us and making hard decisions. I tried to be what he needed me to be, but it was his selfless service that often required him to bear that burden. I admired that. I tried hard to emulate that as I grew. His love for his family and the way he took care of them was also amazing, something that I admired from afar. It was in this unit that I started to feel the shift from the family that raised me to the family I raised. My Army family is part of both stories. Sergeant Claudio was a mean, caring, grumpy, smart leader. A peer, but a mentor too. He had his issues, but never let them define who he was. He was a great leader and a peer, and always had an ear for me without judgment when I needed it. Like me, he was passionate and wanted nothing but the best for his Joes, but most of all, he cared, even for the ones he didn't like. He was a leader that leaders depended on. I wanted to be like that. The Army threw a lot at him, and he always managed to handle it and overcome the hardships. He still does it, and from afar, I watch and get inspired every day. One day I'd like to tell your kids about how their dad is a hero in my book and why. The Buffalo Bros. You know who you are. Watson, Cartmel, Wynn, Newman, and the rest of the gang. I always felt a little odd in the group, the only one with a family. But you four, you accepted me as I was. I don't know if you ever judged me because I was in the infantry first, but you accepted me as an equal just the same. I hope you learned from me as much as I learned from you. I cherish each of your friendships and your loyalty that we quickly developed before deployment and after. You earned my trust and my love, and I hope you feel the same way. I've enjoyed seeing you on and off over the years and seeing you on the social media. You've really helped me in my transition from infantry to MP, and that's something that I can't ever repay. At this point, I think I need to briefly discuss my injury, not for sympathy's sake, but to thank those who stood by me to ensure I got to remain in the Army and reach heights that I once thought were impossible. While in Afghanistan, part of my many missions that we were inherited was perimeter security. I served many roles, and one of them was tower guard. Designed to be a two-man post, we found ourselves alone for 12-hour shifts on the towers at some point during the manning. I didn't mind it too much. One particular morning, toward the end of my shift, and looking to take a couple days off, I was at the top of the tower, and about 15-20 feet above the ground, about to head down the stairs. As I got to the staircase, there was a large explosion to my back. My guess is it was about 200 meters or so away, but it was loud, and I felt it as I heard it, which told me it was too close for comfort. It wasn't unheard of for random mortar attacks. We never really felt like we were in any real danger, but it did surprise me. My reaction was to jump off the tower and get to the bunker, just like they trained us. Sort of. They trained us to get in the bunker. They didn't teach us to jump off the towers. That was stupid. They beat into our heads at mortars comes in threes. There was only one explosion, but I expected more. When I hit the ground and I landed on my feet, I dislocated my hip, or at least I thought I did, and I popped it back in, which hurt worse than when I fell out. I limped around on it bad for several days. With my knee issues, it wasn't uncommon to see me limp, so no one really ever asked about it. Not that I would have told them what happened. I was embarrassed at my reaction and my subsequent injury. I slept for 2 days straight until my next shift started. I struggled for a while, and again my duties changed, and I was put in a position where I didn't have to wear my gear all the time and spent most of my time sitting in a chair. That helped a lot. For 4 months I walked on it trying to get better, but slowly got worse. We redeployed, and long story short, my hip kept giving out on me, and my wife made me go get it looked at. After fighting with the Army medical personnel to take my complaint seriously, they discovered that I actually broke my hip. They believed that I had a tear and a bone fragment bouncing around in there, causing more harm than the actual fall. If I had learned from my previous injury with Sergeant Magyar, I would have known I was injured and not just hurt when I fell. But my pride kept me from handling it when I should have, and likely I would have been better off. It took the medical professionals over a year to get me to a point to have surgery to fix it. Well, it never got fixed, but they stopped the regression. They told me I'd never walk again without the assistance of a cane. The feeling in my thigh was likely gone for good, as they had cut the nerve. My medical review went to Walter Reed Medical Facility and came back not fit for duty. All of this was happening as I PCS'd to the 217th Military Police Detachment at Fort Lee, Virginia. I showed up hurt. In my opinion, I was a poor excuse for a soldier at that point, not the impression I wanted to leave. I tried very hard to stand out and do what I could. I probably overdid it more often than not, but my pride, my loyalty to the Army refused to let me quit. I like to think my command saw how hard I was trying and how hard I just wanted to be just another soldier. They let me lead the training staff, and I put everything I had left into that. The effort paid off in the form of unwavering support. From my platoon sergeant to Staff Sergeant Butts to the CG, they all wrote letters on my behalf to the medical board recommending my retention. But it was denied. With just under 30 days left in the Army, the Secretary of the Army, Peter Guerin, came to Fort Lee. My command sergeant major ensured I got a chance to ask that man a question. Not just a question, but the first question. I ended up pouring out my heart about what happened and about how much I love the Army. I asked him if I could stay in the Army. He quickly said yes and made it happen. 3 days later, I had orders to recruiting school. And if you've ever been in the service, you know nothing like that ever happens that fast. I promised him that day that I would not fail him, and now I believe I've kept my promise. While he may be the single most important person that affected my Army career, I could not have done it without the leadership and the soldiers of the 217th. Sergeant Butts, First Sergeant Smith, Captain Moore, Command Sergeant Major Hall, Colonel Bigham, Major General Stevenson. I can't thank you or repay the efforts that y'all went to for me. I only hope that knowing that I made it to the end, with my head high, on my own 2 feet, without a cane, makes you proud. My family and I are so very grateful. I continue to push myself, but I've learned my limits. I manage my pain, and I tried to be the standard bearer for what right looks like while on recruiting. I tried to care as much for my soldiers and my future soldiers as you did for me. Thank you. Recruiting has been the hardest and most challenging assignment I've ever had. It is the only job I know in the Army that you can do everything right and still fail as a soldier. As a soldier, that's hard to process, let alone accept. While recruiting was the most challenging, it was also the most rewarding. Inspiring young men and women to be better tomorrow than they were today is an amazing feeling. I met some of the best people I know on recruiting duty. My North Dakota hockey buddies, who let a crippled guy who could barely walk sometimes play with them and help him get even better. Jason and Peter, you two were critical of my introduction to the family, and all of you, every one of you, that played, you can't imagine the healing you did for me on the inside, let alone my leg. Sergeant Michaels and Sergeant Serta. Sergeant Michaels, you were always there to listen and help me see the correct way of doing things. You always had my back for that. I will always have yours. I'm very proud of you and your wonderful family. I've loved watching you excel and surpass all expectations that you had for yourself. I'm proud to call you my friend and think of you as family. Sergeant Serta, you said to me once, dude, you're stupid for not taking college if you don't make time. It's free. You'll regret it if you don't. You straight up punked me out in front of the office and a few future soldiers. I couldn't be more grateful. That was the push I needed to get back on track. I graduated in 2016 because of your peer leadership. Your lesson pushed me to chase my MBA, and I'll complete that this year. Sergeant Neuenfeld, Sergeant Flynn, and Sergeant Maldonado, my Newton crew. You guys were great. You were honest, and you helped me more than I ever helped you. I appreciate your support, especially when things got combined and confused. You were always my guys in my mind. Miss Elizabeth, you were still the best company administrator I ever met. While we all know you worked hard, it was your genuine love for soldiers that made you special. I hope life gives you the love you deserve that matches the love you always had for us and our families. Sergeant Major Morehouse. I know I used everyone else's ranks as I knew them, until you, but I want you to know how much I admire, respect, and simply how proud I am of you. I learned more from you in the short time we were together with our team of misfits than any other leader I had in USAREC. I didn't like you at first, but once I learned how to speak your language, there was no one else I'd rather follow. We were never really peers. You were so far beyond what I could ever be, but that didn't stop me from trying. You were the epitome of who I strive to be like. As much as we were different, we were the same. I quickly realized you developed into my brother. I couldn't get rid of you if I tried. I can't tell you how much I look forward to continuing the Donnie and Rob show and watching your family grow up. Arkansas. Where do I start? I was never as disappointed with an assignment instruction than I was when I found out we were coming to Arkansas. Before I left for Arkansas, I had a recruiter bring a kid to me for a signature that he needed. The recruiter told him I was leaving, and the kid asked me where I was going. I replied, Arkansas. He said, "Oh, where's that?" I blankly stared at him and replied, "The United States." He laughed. He said, Yeah, but what state?" I knew how the kid felt, because I felt the same way, thinking that Arkansas was going to be so backwards it probably shouldn't be a state anymore, but in fact it still is a state. I told him so, and then we had an awkward laugh. I looked at his recruiter and asked if he'd been given the practice test yet, and suggested maybe another test might be warranted. But much to my surprise, Arkansas was wonderful, and it quickly became our home. The community here invited us in and accepted us with warm and loving embrace. It was easy to make friends and even new hockey buddies. Jeff, Lance, and Dave, you and your families have made this a real home for me and my family, and I can't thank you enough for your kindness. Paula really has made roots here, and it feels like she knows everyone in town. I dare not try to list them here, but the families of our kids' teams and our softball buddies and our cornhole rivals and our CrossFit gurus, thank you for making this a welcoming place for my kids and my wife. I am in your debt. I've had a lot of soldiers while assigned here. While I have always cared for my guys, some of them stick out more than others. Staff Sergeant Ashley. He was my right hand when I first got here. He was surprisingly right about a lot of things that I thought were wrong, but he knew how to back it up, and he quickly earned my trust. I'm proud of you and how you have excelled in your new position. It's been fun watching you from afar and watching you grow. I wish you well. Staff Sergeant McCoy. I love you to the moon and back. I see you as my baby brother. You may be even kind of my son when I look at you. I'm super proud of the man you are becoming as an NCO, as a husband, and as a father. Keep on achieving and be better than me. I'd like to be talking to Sergeant Major McCoy in the future. Sergeant Brandstetter. Even though I was in charge, I often sought First Class Brandstetter, Even though I was in charge, I often sought your counsel. You always had an honest, unique perspective on things that I appreciated. I valued your loyalty and commitment to the team and your values. I expect great things from you. I'll always be around for you and for your family should you ever need us. Sergeant Pla. Yes, you made the list. A short stint at Sharp School with you made me realize you're my mini-me. I was you 12 years ago. You have a bright future in the Army. Keep working hard. Keep trying to be better tomorrow than you are today. You, too, have the ability to be a sergeant major, and I expect you to be much better than me. You have a beautiful family. Cherish them. Make sure you see them when life is hard, not just when it's easy. I frequently got too busy and distracted when life was hard with work and never really came home when I was home. I was always trying to be better at work and never focused on being a father. Make sure you take time for yourself. Make sure you take time for Lisa. Make sure you take time for that little boy, because before you know it, he's going to be driving and you're going to be retiring. You're such a young family, and I see my family 12 years ago. It excites me to see what you have ahead of you. Learn from my mistakes. Lean on Lisa the way I should have leaned on Paula. It'll save you a lot of heartache in the end. She's there so you don't have to do it alone. I'm just reiterating what Paula's always told me and I frequently forgot. Love you guys. My Fort Smith team. My last team. I want you to know that I tried very hard to be what you needed me to be. I tried to bring understanding and calm to a situation that seemed shifting and turbulent most of the time. Captain Chris, 1st Sergeant Elam, you two were the best command team I had in my 12 years in USAREC. You each had your own strengths, and together I believe you were the best command environment I ever had. For the first time in my career, I found myself identifying more with my command than I did my soldiers. I wasn't perfect, but your level of support you showed me was immeasurable and appreciated. I value your friendships more than you know. I will always be here if you ever need anything. Sergeant Farmer, your perspective and leadership within the station often determine the morale and well-being of the station. Your reach was felt, and I know how challenging it can be to be a senior NCO with little peers to lean on. I tried to balance being the station commander and your peer as much as I could. Your strength and wisdom helped me immensely when we lost a recruiter to personal issues. When I needed you most, you were always there. I appreciated that more than you know. Sergeant Sheets, I don't think I ever had any soldier that cared as much as you did and then at the same time acted like as if he didn't care. You were the silent backbone of the station until you were upset, and then you were a bullhorn in my office. Your honest and heartfelt opinions were always valued. Your attention to detail was unmatched, and my trust was earned very quickly. I watched you grow and become a more well-rounded NCO and man. I'm very proud to have served with you. I look forward to hearing from Sergeant Major Sheets in the future and talking to you someday about your family. Sergeant Daniels, you're my inherited red-headed stepchild, and we didn't get much time together. I was not ready for your level of sarcasm and duly rated wit. You always seemed to know when the team needed to laugh and when I needed a break. You too have a great perspective and often gave me things to consider. I don't know if I ever taught you much, but I hope I at least inspired you to be better. You're a great NCO and even a better father. I look forward to more hunting trips in the future and hope you can see me as a friend. Sergeant Kuth, you are the last new soldier I will have a profound and direct effect on. Your high energy and want and will to win will be hard to match. In just over a year, I watched you develop into a great recruiter, one who cares for his future soldiers and what lies in front of them. I hope my story helps you find your story. I hope you remember where you come from and use that not as a pity party, but as an example of how you overcame. You too have a bright future in the Army, and I expect great things from you. When you open up your own donut shop, because I know that's your dream, I want to know, I'd like to be one of your first customers. Keep chasing your dreams, kid. You will learn more about yourself on that journey than you will when you get where you want to go. The new guys. Sergeant Peterson, Sergeant Kidwell, Sergeant Miner, Sergeant V. Lean on each other. Learn from each other. Listen to the seasoned recruiters, but find your own way. Support Sergeant Denton. No one's going to look out for you more now than he will. Learn from him. Take from him his good, learn from his bad, and be better. I believe you all have the talent and motivation to be one of the top teams in the brigade. Good luck to you. Sergeant Denton, the man that took my place on the line. I always told the future soldiers I was recruiting that they were replacing me on the line. But it is you who is really doing that. I have carried a sense of guilt around with me for not being out there on the line, missing the regular Army. Try not to be me in that respect. There's no going back now. Keep your eye on the horizon and keep moving forward. It amazes me how you've grown in just a short amount of time. I wasn't ready to let go when they gave you the reins. I was even a little angry. But I wasn't angry at you, and it wasn't because I didn't think you were worthy. It was because I wasn't ready to be irrelevant. You have done an outstanding job, especially considering what's happened recently in the world. I believe you have a bright future. Stay hungry. Be more humble. Remember to listen to your team. Always care for them more than anyone else, and they will take care of you, just like you guys took care of me. When things get to be too much, and from time to time they will, you know how to find me. I have the highest of expectations for you, but I want you to know I'm already proud of you. Remember to tell your leaders what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. It's not always the same thing. To the families of the people I have helped enlist, and to those I've served with, I hope you know that I genuinely care about all of you. To the soldiers that I've helped enlist, the Johnsons, the Lashers, the Sheltrecks, the Rodlands, the Birdsalls, the Carters, the Duggars, the Conklers, and the Sherrards, and all the other soldiers I helped somewhere along the way. I would never be able to remember all those names, but know this: I believe in you. Seeing your success was the best reward I could have hoped for. Most of the time, you ship off and we never see you again. Remember, you determine who you're going to be, what type of soldier and person you will become. Stay true to your Army values. Never compromise your moral courage. Continue to set goals and aspirations for yourself. Always believe in yourself. I read on a basketball sneaker the other day, "Don't tell me the sky's the limit when there's footprints on the moon." Don't let the world around you determine your reach. Chase your dreams with an undying motivation. Know that it's okay to change your goals and just keep moving forward. Take a knee when you have to, but don't stop for too long. The longer you stop, the harder it is to keep going. Whether you reach your ultimate goals or not doesn't matter. It's less about the destination and more about what you learn on the way. My life, and many of our lives, as I'm sure, have been a roller coaster ride. The first hill as you climb up, you're so excited you can't hardly stand it. But as you near the top and it starts to creep in, you start to creep over the hill. Fear creeps in. The what-ifs start to emerge. Hands in the air, screaming with excitement, going down the first hill fast and furious, up a hill, down a hill, hard into the corkscrew. Start to get a little sick, want to get off the ride, but you're out again. Moving faster, headed to the loop-de-loop, fear, excitement rolled into one. You go all the way around, then the ride slowly comes to a stop. You'll have 3 choices. Ride again, call it quits, or find another roller coaster. Only you will know the right answer when the time comes. Listen to your inner strength. Believe in yourself and your abilities to overcome and chase your dreams. There have been times in my life when I forgot to do those things, but I have learned from my mistakes. My life hasn't been easy. I've had some hard road. I'm sure I have some more hard roads ahead of me, but I wouldn't change a thing. It's made me who I am. To my family that I will continue to raise. My heart is with my love, my Paula Jo, and she is my runaway star. I run behind her trying to catch up, but she's always just one step ahead. To my children, I will try to be what you need me to be, and I hope to become what you want me to be. I will spend the rest of my days focused on you, learning all over again how to find a new purpose, hoping to inspire a new generation of dreamers. This time, not as Sergeant First Class Dormer, but as Dad, Don, and maybe even Mr. D. Thank you, all of you, for the opportunity and the privilege to wear this uniform. I hope I made you all proud. I've given it my very best. It was my honor to have served for you and to represent the nation that I love so dearly. Goodbye.